We've had a monster among us.
Jesse McFadden.
Jesse McFadden.
Killing 6 people before killing himself.
In May 2023, Jesse McFadden, a convicted sex offender from Henrietta, Oklahoma, committed an unthinkable act of violence. McFadden, who was facing an imminent trial for sex-related charges, murdered 6 people, including his wife, her 3 children, and 2 visiting teenage girls before taking his own life. The victims were discovered on his rural property after concerned families reported the teenagers missing. On the weekend of April 29th to 30th, 2023, Jesse McFadden invited 2 teenage girls, Ivy Webster, 14, and Brittany Brewer, 15, to his home in Henrietta, Oklahoma. The girls were friends of McFadden's stepdaughter, Tiffany Guess, 13. The plan was for the girls to enjoy a fun weekend, including a trip to the mall and a family entertainment center in Tulsa. Everything seemed normal, and the teens were excited about the plans. Saturday, April 29th. McFadden picked up Brittany around noon. The group, which included McFadden, his wife Holly, her children Riley Allen, 17, Michael Mayo, 15, and Tiffany spent the day together. Ivy stayed in contact with her mother, Ashley Webster, throughout the evening, sending updates on Snapchat. The girls were expected to return home by Sunday evening, but they didn't. Sunday, April 30th. Ivy's parents received messages in the morning saying the group was heading back to the McFadden property. However, when the girls failed to come home as planned, their families became worried. They tried calling and texting but got no response. The situation became even more alarming when the girls didn't show up for school on Monday, May 1st. That same day, Jesse McFadden was scheduled to appear in court for a trial related to charges of sexting an underage girl and possessing child pornography. Instead of showing up, McFadden chose violence. Sometime between Sunday night and early Monday morning, McFadden killed everyone in the house. He first shot and killed his wife, Holly, and her 3 children, Riley, Michael, and Tiffany. He then sexually assaulted and killed Ivy and Brittany. Afterward, McFadden took his own life. Monday, May 1st. When Ivy and Brittany were reported missing, an Amber Alert was issued. Police began searching for McFadden and the 2 girls. Later that day, they found the bodies of all 7 victims on McFadden's rural property. Some were inside the house, while others were outside. The discovery shocked the community and left the victims' families devastated. The tragedy at Jesse McFadden's property in May 2023 resulted in the deaths of 6 people: McFadden's wife, her 3 children, and 2 visiting teenage friends. Holly Guess, 35, was Jesse McFadden's wife and the mother of 3 children, Riley, Michael, and Tiffany. Holly worked from home selling life insurance. Her mother, Jeanette Mayo, described her as a fantastic mother who loved her children and was overprotective of their well-being. Michael Mayo, 15. Holly's son from a previous relationship was a high school sophomore. His interests included science, technology, and video games. Tiffany Guess, 13, was Holly's youngest child and a middle school student. She enjoyed drawing and crafting. Riley Allen, 17. Holly's eldest daughter was a high school senior preparing for graduation. Ivy Webster, 14, was one of the 2 visiting teenagers at the McFadden residence. Her mother, Ashley Webster, described Ivy as "my sunshine." Brittany Brewer, 15. The other visiting teenager had recently participated in a local beauty pageant and aspired to become a teacher. Her father, Nathan Brewer, said, "It's just a parent's worst nightmare, and I'm living it." The investigation into the Henrietta killings began with a missing persons report filed on the morning of May 1st, 2023, and quickly escalated into a terrible discovery: the missing teens and the first alarms. The first signs of trouble began when Ivy Webster, 14, failed to return home as planned on Sunday evening, April 30th, after spending the weekend with her friend Tiffany Guess, 13, at the McFadden residence. Ivy's mother, Ashley Webster, had stayed in contact with her daughter via Snapchat throughout the weekend, receiving updates about their plans, which included trips to the mall and a family fun center. However, as Sunday came to an end and Ivy didn't return, the family's concern grew. Simultaneously, the family of Brittany Brewer, 15, another friend of Tiffany's who had joined the sleepover, became worried when Brittany also failed to come home. Both families began frantically trying to reach the teens and the McFaddens, but received no response. By Monday morning, May 1st, Ashley Webster and Nathan Brewer contacted law enforcement to report their daughters missing. Brittany's father later recalled the rising dread he felt as he realized something was terribly wrong, saying, "I just knew. When she didn't show up, I knew something bad had happened." Adding to the urgency was the fact that Jesse McFadden, who had been living with his wife Holly and her children, was scheduled to appear in court that very morning for a jury trial. The charges, stemming from 2017 allegations of sexting an underage girl and possessing child pornography, carried the potential for significant prison time. When McFadden failed to show up for court, alarms were raised. The search for the missing teens. Authorities quickly acted on the missing persons reports and McFadden's court absence. An Amber Alert was issued for Ivy Webster and Brittany Brewer, with officials suspecting the girls were still with McFadden. Police began to piece together the events of the weekend, learning that the teens had last been seen at the McFadden property. Law enforcement officers arrived at the rural property near Henrietta, Oklahoma, on the afternoon of May 1st to conduct a welfare check. The property was isolated, surrounded by wooded areas and fields. Upon entering the property, officers were faced with a devastating scene. The bodies of 7 individuals were discovered scattered in and around the property. Some were found inside the house, while others were outside. Among the dead were Jesse McFadden, his wife Holly Guess, 35, her 3 children, Riley Allen, 17, Michael Mayo, 15, and Tiffany Guess, 13, and the 2 visiting teens, Ivy Webster and Brittany Brewer. McFadden's body was discovered with a self-inflicted gunshot wound, confirming that he had taken his own life after carrying out the murders. The Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, OSBI, took over the scene and began a meticulous examination of the crime. The scene investigators tried to reconstitute Jesse's actions. Evidence indicated that he used a firearm to kill all 6 victims before turning the weapon on himself. Forensic examination revealed that Ivy Webster and Brittany Brewer had been sexually assaulted before their deaths. Investigators worked to establish the timeline of the killings. It was determined that the murders likely occurred late on Sunday, April 30th, or in the early hours of Monday, May 1st. McFadden appeared to have planned the attack with meticulous detail, ensuring that no one would escape. The bodies of Holly and her 3 children suggested that they were killed inside the home, while Ivy and Brittany were found outside, in a possible attempt to hide their remains. As investigators dove into McFadden's background, his motive began to emerge. Facing an impending trial that could have sent him back to prison for a long sentence, McFadden was determined to avoid accountability. In a conversation with his mother shortly before the murders, McFadden reportedly stated, "I'm not going back to prison." Evidence suggested that McFadden had carefully planned the murders as a way to avoid his legal fate. He used the family gathering as a cover, ensuring that all the victims would be present on the property over the weekend. The criminal history of Jesse McFadden. Jesse McFadden's criminal record became a central point of public outrage following the murders. His background revealed a disturbing pattern of behavior. 2003 conviction. McFadden was convicted of first-degree rape in 2003 and sentenced to 20 years in prison. The crime involved the assault of a teenage girl. Despite the severity of his offense, McFadden was released in 2020 after serving 17 years. 2017 allegations. While still incarcerated, McFadden was accused of sexting a 16-year-old girl and possessing child pornography. These charges were not resolved before his release, and he was later scheduled for trial in 2023. Despite his release, McFadden faced minimal supervision, raising serious questions about the adequacy of the justice system in monitoring high-risk offenders. Law enforcement's response. Law enforcement officials expressed their shock and devastation over the case. Okmulgee County Sheriff Eddie Rice described the scene as heartbreaking, adding, "It's something no one should ever have to see." Investigators faced the task of notifying the victims' families and piecing together the timeline of events. The discovery of the bodies sparked questions about how McFadden, a convicted sex offender, was able to live freely surrounded by children and evade closer scrutiny. The case of Jesse McFadden and the Henrietta killings took a darker turn with revelations about McFadden's predatory behavior and his manipulation of a teenager, Caitlin Babb, years before the murders. This harrowing story exposes systemic failures that allowed a dangerous offender to evade accountability, resulting in devastating consequences. In 2015, when Babb was just 16 years old, she accidentally connected with McFadden after acquiring a phone number previously associated with someone he was trying to contact. McFadden, who was serving a sentence for rape at the time, began a conversation with Babb, presenting himself as caring and friendly. She had recently moved to Oklahoma from Texas to live with her grandparents and was struggling to adjust to her new environment. McFadden exploited her loneliness and lack of support, quickly establishing a manipulative relationship. McFadden hid his incarceration at first, later explaining his rape conviction as a misunderstanding. He gained Babb's trust, gradually escalating their conversations from casual chats to inappropriate and invasive exchanges. He asked for proof of her age, and Babb naively sent him an image of her learner's permit. Over time, his requests became explicitly sexual, and despite her discomfort, Babb complied, believing he cared for her. Babb later admitted, "I was brainwashed. Even though I was only 16 years old, I felt like he loved me." The relationship came to light when Babb's grandparents discovered a letter from McFadden in her room. He had instructed her to open a P.O. box to receive his correspondence, signing the letter as her husband. Alarmed, her grandmother, Patsy Pappan, contacted the authorities. In July 2016, a prison officer confiscated a smartphone from McFadden, uncovering sexually explicit conversations, images, and videos involving Babb. In September 2017, charges were filed against McFadden for soliciting sexual conduct from a minor and possessing child pornography. Despite clear evidence, his trial was repeatedly delayed, allowing McFadden to continue his manipulative behavior even after his release in 2020. The trial for McFadden's new charges faced multiple delays, including staffing changes within the prosecutor's office and logistical issues. Babb, now an adult, maintained her commitment to testifying against McFadden, hoping to prevent him from harming others. She stated, "I thought I was protecting people. I thought this was going to keep him from hurting more people." As the case progressed, McFadden became increasingly aggressive. Babb revealed that his demeanor changed drastically, and he began threatening her. These threats drove her to block his number and cut off contact, though the emotional toll persisted. On Sunday, April 30th, 2023, the night before his trial was set to begin, McFadden sent a chilling Facebook message to Babb. The message, sent from an account named Holidays, read, "Now it's all gone. I told you I wouldn't go back. This is all on you for continuing this." The message included a photo of McFadden staring directly into the camera. It was unclear whether the message was sent before or after McFadden carried out the murders of his wife, her 3 children, and 2 visiting teens. The police chief leading the investigation, Joe Prentice, interpreted the message as McFadden blaming Bab for his impending trial. When Bab received the Facebook message, she felt a mix of confusion and fear. She believed McFadden had violated the terms of his bail by contacting her, and sent a screenshot of the message to the Muskogee County District Attorney's office. Shortly after, she learned of McFadden's absence from court and the Amber Alert issued for Ivy Webster and Brittany Brewer. Bab immediately fled to a nearby Airbnb, fearing for her safety. In the aftermath of the murders, Bab expressed overwhelming guilt and frustration, believing that the justice system's delays had allowed McFadden to harm more people. She stated, "They could have prevented these deaths. This never should have happened. I don't know how many times I screamed at the top of my lungs for someone to care. Now look at what happened." Her grandmother, Patsy Papin, praised Bab's resilience, saying, "She's wanting to be heard. She would not back down from this. I'm so proud of her." The tragic killings in Henrietta, Oklahoma, in May 2023 exposed critical flaws in the justice system. The events highlighted how poor oversight of high-risk offenders can lead to devastating consequences. For the families of the victims, the loss of their loved ones has turned into a mission to bring about meaningful change. They are working to ensure that no other family suffers the same heartbreak. Ivy Webster's parents, especially her mother Ashley Webster, have become outspoken advocates for stronger laws to monitor and manage sex offenders. Since Ivy's death, the family has worked tirelessly to raise awareness about the dangers posed by offenders who are released from prison without proper supervision. They have launched public campaigns and initiatives aimed at educating families and communities about the risks. These efforts include public talks, social media outreach, and collaborating with lawmakers to push for legislative reforms. Ashley stated in an interview, "We had no idea someone like Jesse McFadden could live so freely. If we had known Ivy would still be here." Brittany Brewer's family, led by her father Nathan Brewer, has chosen to focus on honoring her memory by supporting youth programs and creating opportunities for children in the community. The family is working on establishing a scholarship fund in Brittany's name, aimed at helping young people achieve their dreams. Brittany had wanted to become a teacher, and the scholarship reflects her aspirations to inspire and support others. Nathan Brewer has also been vocal about the need for better laws to protect children, stating, "Brittany had so many dreams and they were stolen from her. We need to make sure this doesn't happen again." The Brewer family has also partnered with local schools and community groups to promote youth safety programs, teaching children and families how to recognize and avoid dangerous situations. The killings ignited a broader movement for change. Residents have organized town hall meetings and discussions with local leaders to demand stronger preventative measures against high-risk offenders. The tragedy highlighted the need for community vigilance, with many families taking steps to learn more about the presence of sex offenders in their areas. Local advocacy groups have joined forces with the victims' families to push for reforms at the state level. These efforts include stricter sentencing laws, advocating for longer prison terms for violent sex crimes, ensuring that offenders like Jesse McFadden remain incarcerated for as long as possible. Improved post-release monitoring, demanding better tracking and supervision of released offenders, particularly those classified as high risk. Increased transparency, calling for clearer information and alerts for communities about offenders living nearby. State Representative Scott Fettgatter has been one of the most vocal lawmakers supporting these changes. He emphasized the urgency of reform, stating, "This tragedy shows that our system is broken. We must protect our children and our communities with stronger laws and oversight." The Henrietta killings have resonated far beyond Oklahoma, sparking nationwide discussions about the justice system and its failures. Advocacy groups across the United States have pointed to the case as an example of why sex offender laws need to be strengthened. Campaigns for reform have gained traction in other states, with lawmakers examining their own systems to prevent similar tragedies. The story has also inspired new tools for community safety. For example, Enhanced Sex Offender Registries. Proposals to make registries more accessible and provide real-time updates to families. Community education programs. Initiatives teaching families how to identify risks and take preventative action. A legacy of change. The families are determined to honor their loved ones' memories by pushing for reforms that will make communities safer. As Nathan Brewer put it, "We can't bring Brittany back, but we can fight to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else's child." The case of Jesse McFadden and the Henrietta killings exposes deep flaws in the systems meant to protect vulnerable children from violent offenders. It highlights the critical need for stronger sentencing laws, better supervision of high-risk offenders, and greater transparency to keep communities informed and safe. While nothing can bring back the lives lost, their memory fuels efforts to act and make meaningful change and ensure that similar tragedies are prevented. Our thoughts are with the families of the victims who have shown immense strength in their pursuit of justice and reform. As Nathan Brewer, father of Brittany Brewer, said, "We have to do better. This is not just about my daughter. This is about every child who deserves to be safe."